Better with stress, and I would pretty much eat mindlessly. Pretty easy to wipe out a bag of chips or something, you and your spouse, or whatever it is, when you're sitting and watching TV. And the next thing that was really difficult for me was difficult relationships. And actually, some of them were quite toxic. And I thought I could deal with it. I would talk to my minister, I talked to friends that I trusted, but nothing ever changed because people didn't change. Because people, unless they realize they have a problem, you're not going to change them. So I'm not saying you need a counselor, but for me, I needed a counselor. So I went to talk to a counselor and I learned to develop healthy coping mechanisms for myself. All right. I set boundaries. For some individuals, I just, didn't have contact with anymore, because when people feed stuff and you hear things like you're fat and, you're not good enough, you don't, it really cuts you down, the negative part of it. So I just, I now set boundaries for myself and I try to limit that exposure to some of the people. And the other people that I try to have around me, I try to maintain positive, supportive people that, don't cut you down. Because a true friend isn't going to, try to belittle you and make you feel like you're nothing. Negative stuff really can do a thing to your self-esteem. And the other thing that Fit for Life did for me, actually, Dr. McKnight kind of threw me a life ring, is when I was about 41, I had a hysterectomy. Well, let's welcome some weight gain. So now I not only have dealing with this, difficult relationship, I have the weight gain. And then a couple of years later, they said, I just felt awful. I'm gaining the weight and I can't do the things I want to do. I'm tired all the time. I can hardly make it to work. When I go to work, I come home and I sleep. So I'm a real fun person to be around. You know, my hormones were a mess because of having a hysterectomy. I was really in early menopause. And then I was told I had lupus or some kind of autoimmune thing. They weren't sure what. I can tell you my liver was inflamed with a liver biopsy. So there was a lot of stuff going on there, and they just kept giving me medicine and I wasn't feeling any better. So I can say now, under a doctor's care, eating healthy, you know, I just can't eat sugar anymore. It's very inflammatory for me, a lot of high carbs. You know, I'm not saying I never have a cookie, but I just really don't have that stuff in the house. So it's a temptation. You know, we've just changed, both my husband and I have done the Fit for Life, and he's lost weight, and it's kind of funny because he's cinching up his belt. I think he just needs to get a new belt. But, you know, in order to make the changes, you got to lay a good foundation. And that's why Fit for Life, you know, is so important to me. You know, I don't do this because I get paid. I haven't got paid yet. I guess it depends on how good the talk is. No, he's got $1. But seriously, what better testament can I give you than he changed and helped my life? Because I was headed down a deep spiral. I was not only depressed, I was gaining weight. I felt awful. All they wanted to do was give me more medicine. And my blood work's great now. I feel good. I swim Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and I bike Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. I'm up to anywhere from swimming, and it started with 1/4 mile. You know, and sometimes not even that much, but each time I increase it. I swim to music. I have knee problems. It's hard for me to walk. So I got to find what works for me. And I guess the other thing I would say to you, just be careful with social media. Do you think people are going to put on Facebook that they have a dysfunctional family? No, they're not going to say that. So don't think, you know, if you have things in your family and you think, man, you're comparing yourself to all these other people with all these beautiful pictures and stuff, well, there's probably more to the story than you realize. So just watch your exposure to that. So I guess in closing, I would just say, you know, take one day at a time. If you mess up, you got tomorrow, start over again. I think that's about it.
That's good.
Do I get any money? Oh, I didn't have any notes or anything.
That's good. Okay. How many times have you taken the class, Debbie?
I guess I'm a slow learner.
Well,
No, seriously, every time I take it, I'm like, where was I? I didn't hear that. There's so much information, really so much information. And I use the book as a reference, and yeah, it's great.
Okay.
Thank you.
thank you.
Thanks
Well,
for
the
throwing
reason
me
I ask her that is,
life rope.
I don't want you to think you can only come one time to Fit for Life and you got it all, because there's a lot. And
No, I had to do it multiple times.
I'm the same way. I have to. And it's weird because I learn things when I teach you, which is like, I develop most of this, but sometimes I get a new insight with it. So it's kind of neat that way. So my goal, yes.
I'm sorry, is the microphone on? Is it?
Yes, it's on.
Oh, yeah.
I just wasn't close enough to it.
Okay,
Can you hear me okay and back?
yeah.
Okay. So my goal is I read your critiques. Thank you for those. Please keep giving critiques and feedback, and you can put it on Facebook too if you want. Well, no, you probably don't want to do that because we'll know who it is. But do it anonymously. That's easier because it helps. And so the one critique was, hey, you talked about stuff last Tuesday night that you already talked about, on those presentations a couple days before. We want time for question and answer. So I want to get to that. I want to make sure that we get to that tonight, so we have plenty of time for a Q&A. So I do feel somewhat obligated, though, to just hit the highlights of the last lecture. So these were the things that we ask you to do. I usually start with a review of your assignment. So your assignment was nothing from a nutritional standpoint. It was some activity 3 days a week for whatever duration you felt pushed you a little bit. And then it was the reading assignments in the workbook, and also the compensatory assignments in the journal. That's really important that you look at that as well. Okay, so the topic tonight is mindfulness. And as Debbie said, some people just don't, they want to get to, let's talk about food. How am I going to fix my diet? But we have to talk about our minds, because our minds kind of get us where we are. This week's purpose was to help you recognize that you do a lot of things that kind of sabotages your efforts to heal, either eat a healthy diet or change to a healthy lifestyle. And so next week, we're going to talk about how to change all that, all those internal signals, how to change the way your brain is wired, the way you think, the way you act, your emotional responses, and even relationships. We'll show you how to do that. But this week is mindfulness. And, sometimes we feel like it takes forever to see the changes, especially if you're judging yourself by weight loss. You're standing on the scales and you're really not seeing the needle move, and it gets discouraging. Well, the reason I put the next couple slides in here was to show you how fast your body changes. It responds really quick. You might not think it's responding because you look like the same person, but it responds quickly. So this top image here is showing you the inflammation. It's showing you a healthy gut right here. This is the lining of a healthy gut. And this is a gut that's not healthy. And when those physical changes occur in the lining of your intestines, we call that leaky gut. And I explained that more in detail on the previous presentations. But really what this is inflammation. And this happens quickly based on the food you eat. And I mentioned that there's bacteria in your intestinal tract that are there to help you with health, help you digest food, help you to make vitamins, and help you to absorb and extract the nutrients from your food, as well as get rid of the bad things. And if you eat at a fast food restaurant for 3 meals, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, you're already changing the genetic expression of those bacteria in your gut in 1 day. It changes that quickly. So if you start to eat really healthy, you're changing the genetic expression of these healthy bacteria. You're putting the right bacteria in your gut that need to be there. Now, you might not see a change in the scale for a couple weeks, but it's happening. And the same thing happens in the lining of your blood vessel, which is the bottom images here. That furry image on the left, that's a healthy blood vessel. That's the lining of the blood vessel. If you eat junk foods, you change it to this very unhealthy blood vessel lining. And this, because you've lost those protective layers, this makes it easier for atherosclerosis to propagate. So you get cholesterol deposits come in the lining of the artery, and then the body says, there's something in there that looks foreign. We don't like that. And it causes white blood cells to go in and try to gobble that up. And that becomes a foam cell. And that's the beginning of atherosclerosis. So this is not what we want the lining of our arteries to look like. But the point is this changes very quickly if you eat healthy. Again, it's like planting a seed. If you plant a seed and you're waiting for it to grow into this beautiful flower, you might wait for a week and nothing's happened. You think, I'm going to dig that seed up and see if it's still there. Well, of course it's there. It's starting to work. You're just not seeing the fruits of it yet. And that's what happens when we make these small changes. So we have to be patient. And then I talked about these bacteria in your gut. And this was kind of an interesting slide because most people think if I'm going to lose weight, I got to eat more, I got to eat better and exercise more. Well, no, there's a lot of pieces to the weight loss puzzle. And one piece to the weight loss puzzle is a healthy bacterial concentration. So this was a really interesting study they did on mice. And they showed that the Western diet shifted the structure of these bacteria in your gut in a single day based on the food that it was presented to. And then they did the study to prove this. So they took identical twins, humans, same person, basically. They're just, they're just different people, but they're same genetics. One twin is obese. Why would that twin be obese and the other identical twin be lean? Well, the answer is epigenetics. It's the environment. The obese individual had the same genes, the same genetic predisposition, but put themselves in the wrong environment for too long and they became overweight. What's the wrong environment? It's stress, it's toxic relationships, it's emotionally defeating thoughts and poor foods and all those things that put us in that setting where we're going to use food to help us try to feel better. So the same genes, and then they put the same type of mouse in each group, and they transplanted the feces from the obese individual, just a portion of it, mixed it up with a little bit of water, and did a fecal transplant into the rectum of these mice. And then they just gave them the same diet, a low-fat, high-fiber diet, a healthy diet where mice stay healthy, they stay lean on this kind of a diet. And they followed them. And those mice became obese. And then the bacteria from the healthy human that was transplanted into the rectum of these healthy mice, those mice stayed lean. So there's another piece of the puzzle. It's the health of your gut also has something to do with weight. So we don't, nobody ever talks about that. But how do you have a healthy gut? Well, you eat the right foods. You eat the foods that nature wants you to eat. It's plants, it's nuts and seeds, it's some berries, it's some fruit, it's just high quality foods from the produce section of the store. But you eat fast foods, you're going to change this. You're going to change this concentration. And the point is it changes quickly. Whoops. Okay, so this is just showing you this inflammation in the arteries and that food matters. So this is what happens with a high-fat, high-sugar diet. It changes the lining of the arteries quickly. It can take up to 8 hours to restore it. We talked about nitric oxide, right? This is such a critical chemical that your body makes to dilate blood vessels, to increase blood flow. And over time, and with the wrong lifestyle changes, we make less and less of it. But it can be quickly restored. And then we talked about telomeres. And the reason I like this topic is some of you have seen like The Biggest Loser or other shows where the doctor will say, well, your chronological age is 52, but physiologically you're 65. How do you know that? How do you do that? Well, it's epigenetics. We can go in and we can measure these genes, and what we're measuring is the end cap right here on each chromosome. So the chromosomes have all the genes that dictate what happens in our body, and these end caps are they're like the plastic on the shoestring. And every time the cell divides, it snips the end cap off just a little bit. And as you continue to snip that, eventually you get to the point where the shoelace or the chromosome starts to fray and fall apart. So when someone is getting really old and you can tell, man, they're aging fast and they probably aren't going to be here too much longer, it's because it's really unraveling fast. Everything starts to fall apart. So the key is, as we age, if we can slow this progression down, so this chopping this off happens really slowly, then it slows down the aging process. And somebody says, gosh, you look like you're 52, but you look like you're 40. It's because we've slowed that down. So how do we do that? Well, I just got this from this paper. Telomere length shortens with age. And so here's some of the lifestyle things that shorten your telomeres quickly. You don't want to do that. It means you're aging faster. So epigenetics, these environmental triggers, you put yourself in a stressful environment, whatever that stress is, you'll age faster. Social and economic stress, people who are just struggling to stay alive economically or socially, they're going to age faster. Exercise can impact that, body weight, smoking. So this is kind of a, whoops, did I do something wrong here? Oh, I think I took a slide out that I wanted you to see. There it is. So you want to keep those telomeres long. You want to shorten how fast that end cap gets cut off. This is from a journal article. I'm not making this up. Smoking, if you smoke 40 pack years, so one pack a day for 40 years, that's 40 pack years. It shortens your life on average by 7.4 years. If you are obese, and it doesn't say how long, but it says an obese person is going to shorten their life by 10 years. Why would that be? Obesity is very inflammatory. It doesn't mean you're going to be diabetic or have heart disease, but it's going to make you more likely to have those and other chronic conditions. Lack of exercise will increase the speed that you age. Unhealthy diets and stress. Look at this. Stress can shorten your life by 10 years. So we all have stress, right? It's just how we manage it and what we tell ourselves in this situation we're in. You can look at stress as an opportunity to grow and learn, or you can look at stress as this is why my life is miserable and it's never going to get better. I mean, one stimulus, two different responses. So the things that slow the aging process are these things they've listed on the right-hand column. And we're going to talk about all those as we go through the course and we talk about food. So how can you heal how fast can you heal? Well, I showed you your gut heals fast. Your endothelial lining of your blood vessels heals fast. Your metabolism can heal quick. Your brain is neuroplastic, and that's what we're going to talk about next week, how to change the way your brain is connected. And I'll show you next week how fast you can do that. You'll be amazed. And then hormones. Debbie didn't really say this. She alluded to it, but hormones has really helped her because once the hormones were balanced, she was able to get some of that weight off that just came on for no reason. Now, musculoskeletal health, cardiovascular fitness, all these things slow down the aging process and help us heal. Okay, so the class, that was kind of introductory. And then the class last week was, are you ready to change? And what I tell people is when you come into the class here and you're like, okay, I want to get my blood pressure down, or I want to get off my cholesterol medicine. That's why I'm here. But I've tried to do that before and it hasn't worked. You can't approach this like you've approached other programs to help you change. This has to feel different. Like Debbie said, you got to really do the work. You got to get inside your head. You got to do the assignments. You got to make changes. And then you're like, well, I kind of messed that up, but I'm going to get back on track. And it's not a a steep course up. It's a step back and 2 steps forward and a plateau, and then you slide way back and then you go forward. So you just can't give up. Okay, so we have to be honest with ourselves. And I think usually the people in a group like this are very honest with themselves because you're willing to try to learn something. But some people are just totally disconnected from reality. They think everybody else is the problem. I don't need to change anything. But you have to be honest enough with yourself to recognize the issues that have got you where you are. Did we do I can't remember on the presentation, did I show you the exercise with the gorilla? Did you see that one? Okay. So I will share that with you. I try to share that with you on Facebook because I usually do that. That's a really good exercise on, are you really paying attention? And do you really see what you think you're seeing? Because it's just a really fun short little video clip. Okay. And then we had to talk about the origin of your behavior. Why do you do the things you do? Some of the things you do are right. Some of the things you're always kind of slipping and it's self-defeating. But the question is not why. The question is, why are you doing that? So we have to understand the origin of our behavior. Okay, so if I ask you, do you do things based on how you feel or how you think? The answer that I'm looking for is we act based on how we feel, right? I can tell you the biochemistry of what happens to a brownie when you put it in your mouth and how it gets, I can tell you every step that happens metabolically to make a fat cell out of it. But if I'm having a bad day and there's brownies in the kitchen and they smell good, I'm thinking I want that and a cold glass of milk, and forget what I know about this. This is going to make me feel better, right? So it's not your thoughts, it's your emotions. So we have to really understand the power of those emotions. And those emotions that you have, all of those emotions, it's the really cool thing about it. It's not this nebulous concept. Every emotion has its own neurotransmitter. There's a chemical structure for every emotion that we have. And when we start feeling jealousy or victimization or anger, Every one of those emotions has a unique neurotransmitter that just floods our cells. And the lifetime of an emotion is 90 seconds because it takes 90 seconds for that chemical to get released, to flood your cells, and then the body to say, let's get rid of it and take it back up and put it in storage. But you can propagate that and keep that going a long time if you keep thinking about these things and focusing on them all the time and telling everybody else all the time why nothing ever good happens to me. Let me tell you a story. I got another story and another thing. And pretty soon those chemicals are just, they're never gone. They're always there affecting your genetics, the way you express your genes, affecting your emotional state. I could do this really easily. I could show you how this works, how these thoughts trigger these emotions, which cause your physiology to change. And the example is, and I can't remember if I told you on the video. The example is if I have a bag and I have this bag and I open the bag up and I toss it out and there's this 4-foot rattlesnake just hissing and rattling. You guys would all have a very quick biochemical reaction, especially you guys on the front row. I mean, you would be moving like that. Your heart rate's up, your eyes dilated. The stress response is immediate. It's survival, right? And the reason that happens is because it's a perceived threat. You're thinking fangs, poison, I could die, it would hurt, all those things. Let's give you the same stimulus, but change the audience. Now we take you guys out and we got a bunch of 2-year-olds. We do the same thing. What's their reaction going to be? They're not going to, you guys are out the door like in 3 seconds. The 2-year-olds, they take a step closer. They see the rattle. They see the tongue. They want to touch the tongue and maybe pet the rattle because their perception is different from yours. Their physiology doesn't change like yours does. But those responses to stress happen to us all the time based on, here comes this person. I know they're going to get on my nerves. So I'm already revved up and ready to go. And you're changing your chemistry and, and it just never ends. So this is a real phenomenon and it's not nebulous. Every emotion has a distinct neurotransmitter and we have to be in control of those. So we do have to learn to control our emotional states. Okay, and these are program beliefs, right? Because the program belief is a rattlesnake could kill me. Well, how did that happen? You started wiring your brain together. It used to be wired like this. Now you change the wiring like this because rattlesnake can cause you to die. Someone who, there's rattlesnake roundups in Texas where they stand in a pit with 100 of them. They have wired themselves differently. They don't have the same anxieties. So what we want to talk about is how your brain gets wired, because this would be the perfect wiring for everything we experience in life, and we kind of mess it up. We get a lot of things misinterpreted. And the reason this is important is because this is probably the most important slide of the whole presentation. Just want to make sure you understand this. So I tried to explain it, and this is a very simple study that we can do. We put electrodes on your brain of different ages, so an infant to a 2-year-old. And when we monitor the predominant wavelength of those infants, it's the real slow wavelength, the delta wavelength. That makes you sleep, and that allows you to grow. That's what young infants do. They sleep a lot and they grow. When you're in deep sleep at night, which we're not in deep sleep very long, you need that deep sleep, not to grow, but to heal, physically heal. But the most important stage is the second stage for the 2 to 6-year-olds, toddlers, the theta stage. So this is a little bit faster wavelength, and you can see it's in 4 to 8 hertz, which is faster than the delta wavelength. This is when these children at this age, when you slow your brain down to this theta wavelength, you're in a hypnotic state as adults. If you could be hypnotized, they would take your gamma, really fast wavelengths, and through hypnosis would slow it down to this. Then you could be impressionable. But this is how young children are. So in this dreamlike state, what they have to do at that age is assimilate information. If it's a bear cub at this age, a bear cub has to learn from mom how to survive. So they're just learning, they're observing, and that's what young children are doing. and they're downloading a ton of information. They're not critically thinking. They're not trying to, make a compare and contrast or use logic. They're just learning. Mom just cried here because she dropped, a glass on the floor. And so I'm going to cry too. I'm learning from my mom. And so, but this is really impressionable, because whatever those messages are that you receive frequently at this age starts to change the way you're wired to be like this. So my dad, who's 95, has never lost his cool. I've never seen him lose his temper. He's wired this way. I don't have a terrible temper, but when it reaches a peak, it's kind of out of control. So I'm wired a little differently, right? And that's because of the belief systems and the things that I tell myself about how I interpret the world. But the point is we can change all this. Next week, I'm going to show you how to change it. So our parents and our mentors at this age have a huge influence on our insecurities and the things that we feel we're confident and competent in. And it's not about blaming your parents, but it's about understanding, gosh, when somebody tells me that I'm dumb, it triggers something within me. No, it doesn't really trigger something in me, but some people, that's a huge trigger, because this was a message that they received as a young child. Or maybe you were told when you were 4 years old, you heard your dad say all the time, you are really chubby. What's wrong with you? Why do you eat so much? And that gets downloaded. And now all of a sudden that's part of your identity. And that's a trigger. And that's a powerful emotion. So we want you to try to think about these things the next week as you do the assignments, because we're going to help you change the wiring, change that belief system. And when you stop believing those belief systems that are harmful and you write a new belief system, then you'll be like Debbie. You'll be able to get out of that toxic relationship, which for her was really scary. I mean, she's still working through it, but she's come a long way with it. Right, Debbie? I mean, do you want to say anything about that?
Yeah, I was pretty much a wreck. It was that and the combination of my hormones were a mess. And I would cry all the time. I was crying all the time. So
Yeah.
by correcting the hormones and everything and learning setting healthy boundaries.
Right.
Yeah. And I can't say that sometimes I don't have a relapse, depending on the encounter.
Right.
But, it's much better than it was.
Right. So that's a change in her chemistry, a change in her wiring. Those things that used to trigger her, they don't have the same power over her that they used to have. That's all part of this healing, because we're trying to change behaviors that are embedded in us. They're really hard to change, but we have to be aware of how they got us to where we are. And again, next week, we'll talk about how we change it. So these are some of the negative belief systems that you might hear as a toddler, right? These negatives are going to be something that kid is going to say, that's me. I'm always a sick kid. I got a sniffle. I better see the doctor. This could be lung cancer. It's just kind of crazy. But then you have positive beliefs, things that you feel confident in and good about. And often those are things that you heard as a young child. By the way, that doesn't just happen in early childhood. It can happen at any age. You can go through a difficult relationship as a teenager and you've downloaded a lot of false information, but that becomes your identity. Or maybe your parents go through a divorce when you're 13 and your emotions are really charged. And now all of a sudden your dad hates you and your mom is not there. You're writing all kinds of stories about what men and women in marriage is all about. But you have to be aware of how those things happen to you. So when these belief systems are triggered, it can often make us feel anger, hurt, attacked, inferior, or just dark. And the question I have, anytime you have a bad emotion that you shouldn't have, you feel like it's out of control, the question that I want you to think about is, what am I afraid of? Because 9 times out of 10, those emotions are triggered by a fear of being rejected, a fear of being abandoned, a fear of losing control, or a fear of failure. I don't have issues with the first two, but I have issues with the second two. I had an issue with this losing control about 2 weeks ago, going to the hospital one morning when I was just overwhelmed with people in the hospital that I had to take care of. Thought I wasn't going to be able to handle it. And my emotions were not a positive emotion. In fact, one person, I actually prayed for help that day. And as soon as I prayed, I said, amen. And I got a ding on my phone. It was my son. He sent me, he said, I just thinking about you. I wanted you to hear this song. Remember this from scout camp? And it was the funniest, dumbest song. It was called the Chicken Fat Song. And if you ever heard that, it's like, that's how we woke the kids up. And I just laughed. I was like mad driving to work. And I just laughed and smiled all the way in. And then God answered my prayer a couple times, but one of them was a phone call from somebody in medical records. She said, hey, are you going to be in today for lunch? I said, yeah. She said, okay, good. Mom made you a pumpkin pie. I put a piece on your desk. I'm like, thank you. But see, I'm admitting it. So that makes it better. But those are triggers for me, right? Because I thought I might fail somebody who was really sick. And how am I going to have control in a day that could have got even worse? Because COVID and admissions have been awful lately. But some of you, like Debbie, toxic relationship. What's her trigger? Feeling abandoned or rejected, right? That's one of them, right? One of the two of them. That's powerful. So when you feel like I can't do this, go back and think about which one of these triggers it might be. And these are reactions that represent our belief systems. So my belief system, when that day was over, I was like, I was wrong. I wasn't going to lose control. I wasn't failing. I was doing my best. And it turned out much better than I thought. But it cost me a piece of pumpkin pie and a lot of stress. Okay, so this is the wiring in the brain that we're talking about. We're talking about the physical wiring of your brain and changing that wiring. And when you're caught up in this emotion, and you got the stimulus for me was a text I got from my partner, said, sorry, I got 5 admissions last night. You're going to have to see. And I'm like, oh gosh. So I bypassed, see, there's the stimulus right there. There's a space in between the stimulus and response where you can stop and say, how am I going to react to this? I just bypassed that. And I went, oh no, great. Day's going to be awful. I don't know how I'm going to do this, blah, 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 blah. I started writing the story. But if I could push pause and say, okay, this is going to be tough. I'll do my best. I will pray for help and I'll make the best of this day and I'll do the best I can. Then that physiological stress that happened to me doesn't happen. So it's hard to push the pause button in the midst of an emotional event. But I can always go back after the emotional event and say, yeah, I see what happened. I should have pushed pause. That takes a lot of work to get there. But just remember, you do have a little time when you're triggered by something to decide how you're going to respond. Because I released a lot of bad chemistry that morning. And if I would have seen that pumpkin pie before I saw the patients, I'd have probably eaten the whole thing. All right. So how heavy is a glass? How heavy is this glass? How hard would that be to hold it up? Exactly. How long you have to hold it up there? So you think about your problems. You think about your challenges. How heavy of a load is that? Well, it depends on how long you're going to carry it and how many people you're going to tell about it and how much you're going to keep bringing it up. So it depends on how long we insist on holding on to the stuff that's negative. We just have to let it go. So these are our belief systems. Okay. And then there's this reality. So we set goals in Fit for Life, little goals. That's the tip of the iceberg. I'm going to do this. I'm going to eat really healthy today. But what drives this is not our intentions. It's our subconscious thoughts, our emotions, our triggers. So we have good intentions. Before we know it, we've blown it. I was pretty proud of myself that it was only a piece of pumpkin pie that day because it could have been much worse. But it's these belief systems that really take us from our goals. So we want to help you recreate those belief systems and change them because that's why this has to feel different to you. If you're just approaching this like you did Jenny Craig or Weight Watchers, these kind of things aren't going to change. And you're going to go right back to the old way that didn't work. Okay. And we talked about distinguishing between perceptions and reality. So is it situations or how we perceive the situation that determines whether we're going to be stressed? It's what with the story we write about it, right? It's not what happens because some people, we see the same events and some people, I was, this is, when I was in college. I was in the kitchen. I don't know what I was making, and the frying pan caught on fire, and the flames are going up, catching the cabinets on fire. And I just said, "We got a fire in here." And my mom came running in, and I ran out to the living room and tell my dad, and he's sitting in the recliner and looked up at me. All right. He was watching the Olympics. He's never been mad. He's never been upset. He's never been too excited. It was his perception, like, no big deal. Barb will take care of it. We'll be okay. Not always the right thing, but I'm just telling you, that might be right. He's 20. He's lived to be 95. He just doesn't worry about things. But these are stories we write because in my mind, the house was going to blow up on fire, right? In his mind, it's like just a little fire. Just put some water on it, you'll be good. Then we have this exercise of what you see, right? I've done this with my kids. So I say, look at this picture and tell me all the blue objects you see, and then you count them. And then you close your eyes, and then I ask you, okay, now tell me all the red objects that were in that image. And you're like, I didn't see any red objects. So what's the point of that? You see what you're looking for, right? So if you look in the mirror and you say, I'm really overweight. Let me tell you, I'm overweight because I eat too much pumpkin pie. I don't exercise. I'm stressed. You come up with all these reasons why you're overweight. Is there any empowerment in that? No. You'll find a million reasons. So what you want to start doing is looking for things that'll help you heal. How am I going to heal? Well, today I'm going to eat salad. I don't really like salad, but I'm going to eat it. And then you start stringing together days like that, and things start to change. But it's really odd how we only see what we're looking for. If you see ways to become more active and ideas for activity, you'll come up. It's just amazing all the things that'll come to your mind. I like this image because here's another picture. Like, what do you see? Well, it depends on where you look, right? On one side of the picture, you see one thing. On the other side, you see another. If you step back, you see the whole image. But some of us are so close, looking right here at our problems, that's all we can see. We have to step back and emotionally distance ourselves. And sometimes we need a friend or a family member to say, here, let me take you back a ways so you can see this. Because sometimes all we see in our life is darkness. Well, there's darkness in here to give you contrast so you can see light and you can appreciate the beauty of the image when you step back, right? So our perception, we have to be careful about what we're seeing because there's a lot of good that happens to us that sometimes we don't recognize. So we have different ways that we can cope with this, and these are not healthy ways to cope with it. And then this infinite loop of powerlessness, this is what keeps people awake at night. Most people have some degree of insomnia. You lay down, you're tired, and you start thinking about all the things you messed up today, or all the things you wish you would have done different. Or you start thinking about, man, I got all these things I got to do tomorrow. How am I going to get this done? And you just rehearse, and you're stuck, and you're just in this infinite loop of powerlessness. And the truth is we have no control over the past or the future. The only thing we can control is today. So if today you walk, you do a little bit more physically, and today you eat healthy, today you're a trim fit athlete and you're a healthy eater. You just got to keep putting those days together and forget about the past and stop worrying about what happens tomorrow. And we did this, hopefully you all did this exercise, right? If you didn't do it, please do it. It's better to do this live than asking you to do it at home, but it's pretty powerful. If you did it, can somebody tell me an experience they had with it? What did it teach you?
Painful.
What's that?
Painful.
It taught you about people?
Painful.
Oh, it was painful.
Painful.
Why was it painful?
Well, sitting there, looking at this big cup of fruit, and of course, he didn't talk about, told us to get it in the beginning, didn't talk about it at the very end. I think it was a third lesson.
So you were salivating and hungry and kind of annoyed.
Okay, we got a fork and we're supposed to grab a piece of fruit. Okay, now you can do it? No.
Yeah.
What?
That's perfect. That's great. You see how food can make you go crazy, right?
You gotta grab it with a fork and it's a great and I got my hand in the cast, okay, that's not gonna work.
Yeah.
So I'm using my left hand, and then I'm supposed to chew the grape 20 times.
And what else were you supposed to do with the fork?
Oh, set it down.
That was hard, right?
Yes, set it down with my left, yeah.
Yeah, that was hard. That is not anything
And
that,
chewing the grape, I have no teeth.
oh, so,
I'm waiting on my denture.
okay. Well, you really needed to chew it 20 times.
I never did get applesauce. I'll still be chewing one grape. Every afternoon.
Excellent,
And
excellent.
I do understand the whole concept.
Do you understand if you do that, if you chew your food that well, or maybe not that well, but chew it 20 times, and you've activated the enzymes in the food, so it's digesting better by the time you swallow it, but you slow down your eating time by 50%. You've, in that same 20 minutes, you've eaten half the food you would normally eat, and you're satisfied after, you could eat it, instead of a whole sandwich, you could eat half of a sandwich. If you ate it that way, you put it down and chew it 20 times and it goes down like applesauce, you're going to eat a lot less because you're not going to be hungry. So there's a lot of power to that. And you could, if you did that right, you could feel the salivary glands kind of squeezing in your cheeks, and you're just aware of the taste and the texture, and you're just more aware of the food. Food should be like fuel for your body to help you heal. It shouldn't be, let me eat the best thing that I can put in my mouth. But, nature has provided some pretty tasty foods for us. And the more we get away from the boxed packaged foods and we eat the produce foods, the sweeter an apple becomes, or the better a carrot tastes, or, the more you enjoy the texture of a piece of celery. So hopefully you all did that and will not forget that exercise, because it's a powerful lesson on mindfulness. So the point is that our body chemistry changes quickly because of the environment we put ourselves in. And unfortunately, why are we so impatient with ourselves? Why do we expect so much to happen so quick? It doesn't happen quick. And then think about the stories that we write when change is slow, when we don't see, it's like, not going to work. I'm the only one that's never going to lose weight. I'm the only one that's going to gain weight. My back's going to always hurt. It's not going to work for me. And we just give up. So the question, are you ready to change? And then the origin of your behavior, and do you really see reality the way it's intended to be? I don't think anybody sees reality. We all have our own take on what the world is, but sometimes our perceptions are really warped and it's detrimental. And we have to be honest with ourselves, but not to the point where we're self-deprecating and we're hard on ourselves, because most of us in this group, that's the way we are. We can't, like Debbie said, she can have a cookie every now and then and not let her beat herself up about it. We have to give ourselves a little bit of leeway and to be human. Okay, so this week, I want you to not eat out at a restaurant. And the reason for that is you're being mindful. When I go to the cafeteria at lunchtime, that's not mindful. I'm going to eat what they're telling me I'm eating today. I've got a couple choices, but usually not the best choices. So that's not mindfulness. Mindfulness is you deciding what you're going to eat because you know it's going to be good for you. Then I want you to drink 12 ounces of water, 6 of those a day if you possibly can. Some people are like, I can't even drink 1 glass of water. I want you to do the best you can. Often what happens is you mindlessly open the refrigerator and you're thinking, what do I want? I'm going to have some applesauce. Well, what your body is saying is I need hydration. So applesauce isn't the best way to get hydration. It's water. So hydrate with water first, and then listen to what your body tells you it thinks you need. And then the last one here is kind of the challenging one for people. I want you to do a 24-hour fast. Now, there's a couple reasons for this. Number one, I want you to be mindful. I want you to, for 24 hours, be aware of how many times you go to the pantry and mindlessly start to put something in your mouth. Or you're watching TV and you got a bowl of popcorn next to you and you didn't even know you did that. So I want you to be, that's one reason I want you to do it. The second reason I want you to do it is I want you to give your intestinal tract a rest. I mean, your muscles get to rest, your body gets to rest, but your intestines are, and your liver and your pancreas and your spleen, they're always working. So give it a break, give it a rest, let it rejuvenate itself. And the third reason I want you to do this is I want you to progress through what it feels like to think you're hungry to knowing you're hungry. Because what'll happen is, and the best way to do this is probably have dinner and then start your fast after dinner, and you eat dinner the next day. So what'll happen is you'll go to bed that night after, say, dinner at 6 o'clock, and you'll think, I don't think I can get through this. Then you'll wake up in the morning and you'll be starving, and you'll be like, I can't get through the day. And then pretty soon that stimulus is going to go away, and you'll be like, gosh, it's 10 o'clock. I haven't even thought about eating. And then lunchtime is going to come. You're going to be hungry. So you'll have about 4 hours where you're going to probably really be able to perceive what real hunger is. The good thing about this is, especially if you're a carb lover, if you eat a lot of carbs, you're gonna think you're gonna die. I mean, if you have a bunch of, like a plate of spaghetti and rolls and a piece of pie for dinner, those first 4 hours after that, you think you're gonna die. Number one, your insulin level goes way up. Number two, this hormone ghrelin in your brain is going to be supercharged, and ghrelin is going to tell you you are starving, you better eat. And then, and when you get up in the morning, ghrelin's going to still be up there telling you better eat, and you're going to say, no, shut up, I'm not listening to you. And it's going to shamefully drop its level, so it doesn't have the same impact on you. And it's going to drop it the more you suppress it, but it'll come back. You suppress it, it'll go down. And pretty soon you won't be driven by that strong urge to eat. That's chemistry. That's that hormone ghrelin. Leptin is the hormone that says I'm not hungry. Ghrelin is the hormone that says I'm going to starve if you don't feed me. Both of those are impacted with a high carb diet. So I want you to do that just for 24 hours. So if you want to drink water, you can drink water, something that's non-caloric. I'm okay with that. If you're diabetic, if you just take pills for diabetes, just don't take them that day for this 24 hours. If you're on insulin, I wouldn't take your pills, and I'd probably cut the insulin level in half. And if there's some other reason you can't do a 24-hour fast for some medical reason, then give up something that's an automatic thing that you would eat every day, so that you're more mindful about it and aware of it. And then I want you to walk, same thing, 3 days a week, do something with physical activity, and then complete the 12 steps in the end of the chapter 2, and then look at the challenges I'm giving you in the journal. So what kind of comments or questions are there?
I just wanted to ask you, I've done the class before, but I have done a 5-day fast before, and where I drank water, and I made homemade chicken broth and just drained it and just had, the clear chicken broth. It's okay to drink that, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I also did like sugar-free popsicles.
Okay.
Okay. And I can't think what
And you didn't kill you.
No, I'm still alive.
Yeah.
Memory is over.
I'll tell you, the people that really
I
lose.
felt great after I did it.
Yeah, the people
my goodness.
that really lose weight do intermittent fasting.
Yeah.
And intermittent fasting is like 16 hours of no food, 8 hours of food. But you're not stuffing yourself. But after you graduate through that, and that's easy, then it's like muscle confusion in the weight room. You're always changing what you do in the weight room. Change it to your stomach. Don't let your stomach figure out what's coming. Go 24 hours without it, or 36 hours, or 2 days without it. And the body will start to respond to that. And if you want to watch a really good video of this, Jason Fung, F-U-N-G, he's a nephrologist who specializes in diabetics on dialysis. And he's written 2 books, the Obesity Code and the Diabetes Code. And he really talks about the science behind this. Intermittent fasting is not the keto diet. The keto diet works, but you'll lose muscle and you won't look healthy. The intermittent fasting diet will keep your metabolic rate high, and you won't lose muscle mass. And you'll get in really good control of your appetite. So he explains that really well. But we're going to go over a lot of his stuff as we go through the next couple of weeks. Okay, so any other questions or comments? Yes.
I have a question about the nitric oxide.
Okay.
It because we manufacture less of it as we age.
Yes.
Is there a supplement you could take to
There is a supplement. It's called Neo 40. Neo 40. NEO 40. You can get it online. You can get it at Mako's. It's a lozenge. My blood pressure was starting to become an issue. I was getting headaches, and when it got high enough, I'd have to take a blood pressure pill. I started taking this faithfully, and my blood pressures are fine now. It's pretty powerful, and it's natural. I mean, it works really well.
I
Yes.
take it before I walk.
Yes, yeah. I take it before I exercise too. Yeah.
I have one. I asked about it at Mako's last week, and they took my name and they said today, they said, oh, your Neo 40's in. But I am taking the Cineprol, 40 milligrams, and Lipitor, 10 milligrams.
Okay.
And 5 weeks ago, the RA, rheumatologist, put me on methotrexate. And I feel I don't need it because I started anti-inflammatory in March because of Marilyn said, try it, so I've been.
Mm-hmm.
And can I add Neo 40 to all my
Absolutely.
supplements?
Yeah.
And the
Yeah.
meds?
Yeah.
And
And then after you've been on it for 3 or 4 weeks, maybe you cut your lisinopril in half and see what happens with your blood pressure. It might still be good.
awesome.
I mean, the nitric oxide is how you have normal blood pressure, most of you, when you're young. You're making it really well.
Blood pressure pill.
Did you with a Neo 40?
Well,
Yeah.
The whole program. I'm
Yeah.
walking and
Yeah.
losing weight and then Neo 40.
Right. Yeah, that's
And my
really
blood
good.
pressure used to be 200 over hundreds.
Uh-huh.
And, they wanted to keep adding more and more. And I'm like, oh, what pills?
It's treating the root cause, right? The root cause of the problem. That's what we have to focus on, and not just the.
My problem,
To manage it.
of course, was the inflammation.
Yeah.
So,
That's exactly right. Yes.
Is it okay to do a 24-hour fast if you're hypoglycemic?
Yes, but what's going to happen is you're going to probably be hypoglycemic. You're not going to feel too good. So you have to be, and most people that hypoglycemic have high insulin levels. So when you don't eat, the insulin is high and it really drops your sugar down. If you're not comfortable doing that, I mean, the best thing to do if you're hypoglycemic is that last meal, make sure there's a lot of fat in it, because that will keep you don't want to have like a big plate of spaghetti with all those carbs, because that'll really drop you when you go. So have a high fat meal before you start your fast. It should help you not feel drop the sugar so much. And maybe you can't get 24 hours. Maybe you get 20, because I don't want you to feel bad or panic. But the more you do it, the easier that will get.
I already do fasting 2 times a week until noon.
Okay, good.
awesome.
Yeah.
So,
Have you had blood work that shows you're actually hypoglycemic?
oh, yeah.
So you take your blood sugar routinely 2 or 3 times a day?
No, I don't take my blood sugar. I did blood sugar test and you can get it.
Yeah, but you can feel it too, right?
Oh, yeah.
Usually you can feel it.
Because sometimes people think their blood sugar's too low, but they just haven't been drinking anything.
True. Yeah. But it's a scary feeling when it gets low, because you feel weak and shaky and out of control, and you don't know what's going to happen. So, but the more you do it, the longer you extend your fast, the easier that will get.
Thank you.
Yes.
Do you have to worry about low blood pressure if you have normal blood pressure and you take nitric oxide?
That's a great question. No, you don't, because the research has been done on that. If you want to watch a really good video, watch Dr. Nathan Bryan, Bryan, and Neo 40. Just Google that, Dr. Nathan Bryan and Neo 40, and he's got 3 or 4 minute videos where he talks about this chemistry. And the answer is no. There's a 56-minute presentation he gave, I think, at the Cleveland Clinic, where he goes into all the science behind this, and he answered that. It won't drop it too low.
Got an online question.
Okay.
What supplements can you take to help heal stomach from ulcers?
So the supplements you can take to heal your stomach from ulcers. I don't know of any supplements that do that. I think food does that, and avoiding foods that really trigger ulcers, and also medicines. You never want to take aspirin on an empty stomach. Never want to take anti-inflammatory pain medicines on an empty stomach. Cut back on alcohol. Alcohol can cause ulcers. Be careful with the spicy foods. If you've got acid reflux, you got too much acid, you got to fix that. And you fix that with diet. We'll talk about acid reflux in a couple of weeks. But I don't know of a supplement that reverses your risk of ulcers. It's being careful with medication.
Also added to that about constipation. By increasing your fiber intake will help that issue with the constipation.
Yes.
Dietary fiber.
Yes.
Fiber from foods.
Right.
That was part of it.
Oh, that's part of the question. So increasing your dietary fiber, which comes from the produce section of the store, not a supplement. I mean, you can take fiber supplements, but it's better to use foods, and then make sure you hydrate really well. And just know that if you get up in the morning, you start off with a big glass of water, you're dehydrated after sleeping all night. You've lost water with your breathing. You haven't put any water in and you've burned it. So start off with a glass of water. And then if you get up and walk around, that often is enough to turn on your intestines to kind of push the feces down to the rectum and say, oh, I think I need to empty. If that doesn't do it, have a small amount of food, and that turns on the whole intestinal tract, and then you'll feel the urge to avoid. What you don't want to do is get the urge to avoid and then say, no, it's his bad timing, I'm not going to go. Because then you'll get constipated. That stool will sit in there, the water comes out, and it's really hard to go. So it's really good to just sit down for a minute. You don't have to be there a long time. When there's something in there, just empty it out and then go on and have the next bowel movement when you feel the urge. Yes.
Tell Maureen, there are many lifetime factors that affect the life of them, or shortening them, I mean.
Oh, the telomeres?
Yeah, the telomeres.
Yes. Lifestyle factors that shorten it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They might have to reduce stress and food, I suppose. What else?
Well, I listed them all up there on that slide.
Oh,
So there's some things that make it speed up, make you age faster, and other things that slow it down.
okay.
So there's a couple, a column with each on one of those early slides.
Okay, thank you.
And you kind of know that, right? You see somebody that smoked for 40 years, they look older. They're wrinkly. Somebody that's sunbather, they look older. Somebody that's a chronic alcohol user, a drug addict for 20 years, they age faster.
Oh, yes, I see that here.
Any other questions? Okay, so give us your critiques tonight, and I'm hoping you guys are all watching the videos, trying to get through those, and we'll see you next week.